Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Retail Corner. This morning, I am joined by Amena Ali. She is the CEO of Optoro. Optoro is a amazing IT company that is doing some really cool stuff. Hey, Amena, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Cole. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Optoro, we'll get to how it manages the reverse logistics return type part of our universe. But can we start by maybe sharing a bit of your CV, Karen, talking about your background a little bit?
Absolutely. I've been at Optoro as CEO for about 2 years now, and prior to that, have had a long career in technology. This is my third company where I've been at the helm, and
Okay.
my journey started many moons ago. I started off in management consulting when I first came out of college. Did that for about 3 years. Went to business school, and then did a tour of duty through both functions as well as companies and sizes of companies. So I started off management consulting, did marketing, finance, sales, partnerships, product, pretty much all of the above, investor relations, and then became a general manager and then CEO. So I've kind of done my tour of duty through all the various departments, which is pretty important to understand a given
Yeah.
problem from all these varying perspectives. Have loved in particular working with sales engineers to solve customer problems, which is what led me into sales, which is what then led me into eventually become a CEO. And as to size the company, it spanned the gamut from $8 billion to like $150,000. So
So a really nice garage sale to a $1 billion company. So
yeah, there was a idea in the R&D group of a company I was at. The company itself was, I don't know, 60 million or so in sales. And this idea was pretty cool to use predictive analytics to optimize home energy use with data. And I kid you not, they just had like $150,000 of a small business incentive research grant and grew
oh,
that into a scalable business idea that really had a lot of impact in terms of
yeah,
optimizing home energy use. So that was pretty cool.
that's something people think about more and more nowadays. But I also looked in your background. You have your degree in psychology, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so, do you think that your kind of understanding of that process, understanding of the human mind, do you think that's helped within a kind of jumping from sales to marketing to everything else like that?
Yeah, it's actually helped in a variety of ways. My focus was on cognitive psychology, and I remember doing research on, what you would call now human factors, UI, UX, in terms of how do people learn things and how do you teach them how to use a product and application. Like back in the day, it was focused on, it was like pre the whole app universe. So it was about
Yeah.
OS, and how do you teach people to navigate operating systems? So it was really about linguistics, semantics, UI, UX. How does the brain receive and manage information? So it was fundamentally about cognitive psychology. Then I was studying economics, and I was interested in behavioral economics in terms of how do people make decisions about risk, about money, um,
Give it.
things
Yeah.
like that, which are now like so germane. So it's not only relevant to like understanding, what are people's pain points and how do they articulate those pain points, but it's actually essential to how do you design products that are really easy to use. Because if you understand how people interact with products, it really comes down to product management, product design to understand what do you need to measure, how do you design products. And then, of course, like the human factors management part of running a business, like just people, teaming,
Right.
that those are things that, at the time, I didn't have any understanding of how, like, does my studying psychology help you with like core management things? And it's actually been remarkably helpful because fundamentally you're dealing with how do you motivate, collaborate, whatever, within your company, with your customers, with partners. So it's proven to be
Absolutely.
amazingly helpful, actually.
Yeah, I mean, given all that, given the ideas of learning and how people are trained and how people interact with the universe, I, I'm I'm not surprised you ended up in retail. I'm not surprised you ended up in,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
all of that is applicable every single day. And so you were talking about pain points, and by and far one of the largest things is the returns process, which Optico does,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, Optoro does, and so how did you kind of come to focus on that
Yeah.
with some of the major milestones within Optoro? Like how is Optoro different,
Yeah,
basically?
yeah, yeah. So I'll answer both your questions. So first off, Optoro's been around for over a dozen years, and therefore we've matured our product line from software to manage returns processing within the four walls of a warehouse. So think like logistics software, software that would work in terms of optimizing reverse logistics, that would work with your WMS and your OMS and your TMS and all the other systems you have, all the systems of record to help you manage the warehouse and manage crediting and customer data and all of that. And then over time, we said, well, you know what? We're looking at one piece of the equation. There's value upstream. There's value upstream in terms of the data story starts when the return is initiated, and probably even before then when an order
Sure.
is placed or a product is purchased. So if you kind of, wind it backwards and say what you really need is data visibility end to end. You need to really sort of license plate the stuff from the beginning to make thoughtful decisions from a routing perspective, from a handling perspective, from an understanding what needs a lot of attention from receiving refund decisions from a customer standpoint and what doesn't, and what's the best way to dispose of the product at the end. Like, does it go back to stock? Is it worth it to repair and refurbish the product? And if
You
so, what can
yeah.
happen with it? Like there's so many interesting questions there across that entire reverse life cycle that it's actually been a fascinating experience. And I think a huge opportunity for software and data and machine learning to add a lot of value to really optimize that entire reverse journey.
Right. So you're taking a complete holistic view. I mean, yeah, I love how you said it doesn't start when the return starts. It starts
Yeah,
actually when it's ordered, and
yeah,
gathering that information correctly and everything
yeah,
else like that. And then all the way through the life cycle of is it destroyed? Is it resold? Is it sold to a reseller or
yeah,
something along those lines? Like there's the spider web of stuff that can happen is
right.
ridiculous. But so when you kind of started this journey, when you started kind of looking at it holistically, was there a piece of information, was there a piece of data that you went in that you just had as an assumption that was challenged by the data?
I would say, if you're asking me, like, what's been interesting discoveries as
Yeah,
you're looking at
absolutely.
this, a couple of different things. So I'll give one example sort of towards the shopper side and one towards the four walls of the warehouse side, because there's interesting discoveries all along the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
So on the shopper side, undoubtedly, the 80/20 rule applies in terms of who's purchasing the goods and then who's driving the vast majority of revenue, the vast majority of profits. So understanding the fact that actually it's not irrational, and the data supports the fact that people who return goods are actually some of your best customers. And you'd be
Okay.
like, I would think that somebody who's a zero returner might be my most profitable customer. Well, true if they like buy and keep tons of product, but the way things work, you know, buy, you check, you see what works, maybe you change your mind, maybe it doesn't fit right, you send it back. So it was a surprising, counterintuitive perspective. If you map, various classes of customers and profitability, looking at return rate, return dollars versus purchase dollars versus quality of returns, there's some really interesting insights. So one was
Hmm.
people who return are liable to be some of your most valuable customers. So then you have to say, well, who's returning but not purchasing? who's returning, but they're wardrobing or there's fraud or whatnot. So then you go down like those subsequent branches to really fine tune the data more. So really understanding your customer dynamics and customer segmentation to figure out then how do you treat everybody the same? So,
Right.
You're running a store, someone's going to be an abuser versus somebody's a good customer, you wouldn't treat them the same way, right? Or someone who's going to commit fraud, you wouldn't treat the same way as a good customer. So the same thing applies both in terms of online decisions that you make in your returns portal as to what options do you give, what do you allow, how much inspection, when do you provide the refund. All of those are, tools in the arsenal to figure out what's the best way to treat my best customers with kid gloves, and then figure out who needs greater inspection versus who do you, deny, or who do you,
Yeah.
to your fraudulent customers, you wouldn't want to give them all the rights and privileges of the good customers. You'd want to put more inspection on it. You'd want to put guardrails around what they could do. So that was one very interesting set of discovery on that side. Now, on the other side, within the warehouse side, it was very interesting to say, there's a large national retailer. You would know the name. You've probably shopped there. They had all of these baby goods that were returned back, right? So think about, when you have a child, all kinds of equipment, right? You got
Sure.
kinds of cribs and car seats and this and that. And, you may have two of one or one doesn't fit right. There's a lot of returns coming back on that. And it's not that it was counterintuitive, but it was surprising and shocking that unless there's a systematic way to receive, refurbish, and get value for that, a lot of that stuff was being pushed to the side and then eventually sent to landfill. Like, what a waste.
Because that's such a high level of quality that you want to send out as a return, because you don't want to you're like, oh, it's just a little crack in the car seat. It's not. You have to inspect that stuff. You have to actually make sure that it's safe and usable at such a high level. And so,
right. So what you have to do is to take the friction out of the process and figure out how can you integrate in channels into the dispositioning where you say, okay, this is a car seat. It's a returned car seat. I'm going to, without a secondary touch and a secondary inspection, I'm going to say, I'm going to plug in this re-commerce channel. So we plugged in a re-commerce partner to this retailer. And then the goods are routed to them. They do the requisite inspection and, refer per, the regulations and standards. And then they list it on their direct-to-consumer website. And then everybody wins because, open box items or what have you, new shoppers get them at a discount. The retailer gets recovery. And, everybody wins. So like that to me is an example of dispositioning done right, with efficiency and recovery. So you're keeping stuff out of landfills and you're actually providing like a really valuable service.
And so before and after service kind of thing, I love the idea of keeping stuff out of landfills. I mean, that's becoming so much of the conversation in retail right now, because it's becoming, the consumer is becoming more and more aware of it.
Yeah.
And it's good that people care about that. And so, like, before and after Optoro, is there some numbers you could put behind that, where you're actually saving this many tons or whatever it may be?
You betcha. So we actually have a report we do every year called the Optoro Impact Report, and making an impact is one of our core values as a company. And we measure that impact in a variety of ways. And one of those ways is to say what percent of goods are put back into stock. Because if you can make the receiving and dispositioning of goods efficient, right? Time is money. And you put those goods back into stock, then what's happening? You recover more of the value of it, and you're basically passing on that value to the next shopper without some tax. Now, imagine this. If you have a 30% cost of returns, which is what it is, that cost gets borne either by the retailer or the shopper. And one of the ways that those costs are passed on is through higher prices, or you put it into landfills, which means the prices go up because there's waste in the system, right? Like nature hates waste. So what you
Yeah.
want is circularity. So we measure the percent of goods that are going back into stock. And we have so many examples of retailers that had only, 80% recovery, 75% recovery. And then afterwards, it is, in the high 90s. So we're really pleased that we're able to put back into stock, 95, 98% of goods that are come back, because the more you can put back into stock, the less ends up in landfills.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So this is a podcast in 2024. So I would be amiss if I didn't ask you the AI question.
Yeah.
And so how are you seeing that machine learning and that AI actually like contribute to your secret sauce, contribute
Yeah.
to your efficiency?
Right. So imagine you have a rules engine, an algorithm whose job it is to optimize and figure out what is the best place for, this water bottle, this jacket, this, mask, what have you, that has come back. Like, I can't help but talk about your mask. It's so arresting.
Thanks.
So what you need to do is to understand and be able to program in and manage a lot of data to say, well, I'll just pick on that mask, for instance. Where is that mask best off going? If there's some damage to it, what is the original price? Where can it be sold for what price point? What is the cost of that repair? What is the cost of transporting it? There's all of these dynamic factors that come in. When that mask gets returned, should it be sent to a distribution center in, Ohio, or in California, or in, Ottawa, or what have you, like wherever it might go? All of these are data points that go in, and you've got time, you've got costs, you've got revenue opportunity. And if you have all of that data end to end, you can ask, the software, what is the best place for me to send it without people, whether that's associates or operators. It's a store decision. It's a decision that's made in the warehouse to do that optimization. And that's
Right.
where data and machine learning and AI comes in to help guide retailers to figure out how can you get maximum recovery, minimal cost, right? That's the essence of optimization. And that's where data and AI really comes in to do so.
So that makes perfect sense. I'm pretty sure that you were using that. And I'd love to talk about you have a strategic partnership with Gap.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing a lot of good things over there, and our listeners and love to actually have boots on the ground anecdotes and everything else like that. So how did working with Gap work out? How's it going with them?
We love working with Gap, and Gap is really a variety of brands. So there's Gap the store, and there's Old Navy, and Athleta, and Banana Republic, and Gap Factory, and Banana Republic Factory. There's a whole,
Sure.
variety of brands, and there's some really exciting things happening at Gap in terms of rejuvenation of the brand and the growth and everything. They're a fantastic customer to work with. So, and by the way, they are incredibly supportive of innovation, creativity, and, kind of solving problems in different ways. So I would say that, we are powering all of the Gap return centers to help process all the returns that come back across all these brands. And the name of the game is, what's the efficiency and the value you bring to return. So actually, Parcel Forum last year, Gap actually held tours for retailers in their distribution center in Gallatin, Tennessee. Wow. It was kind of an amazing thing. And they shared all of these amazing cutting edge things they have there. I mean, you're talking about, robotics, you're talking about Optoro, you're talking about, all of the above, like really amazing innovations from a processing and operations perspective. So that is sort of the heart of what we're doing. And then to my point on, it needs to be integrated with How do you actually get the goods back in? So the
Yeah, because
returns.
you're dealing with a pretty wide spectrum, pretty wide spread of actual retail price. Because I mean, you've got your Old Navy stuff, you've got your Banana Republic stuff, and at the end of the day, they're both shirts, but the
Yeah,
Banana Republic shirt is significantly more retail price
that's
than
right.
your Old Navy stuff, or even your factory stuff and everything else
Right.
like that. So seeing the return per item would be
Yeah.
kind of difficult across the
Right.
entirety of the brand family.
Right. And what you're really talking about is you're going to have different SOPs based on brand, based on product, as to what you consider, new, how you treat it, what the value is, all of that. So that is a good example of, your system needs to be flexible enough on the returns processing software to be able to elegantly handle a broad variety of assortment based on value and based on what you want done with it. I would also say that the other part of what we're doing with Gap is, integrating upstream or have integrated upstream in terms of the returns portal, which is powered by Optoro, and the ability to move goods back on a box-free, label-free perspective. The other huge discussion item nowadays, by the way, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the product we just launched today, which is Optoro stores. Because of course, newsflash as of today,
Okay,
issued the press release this morning. And so
exclusive. Here we go. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, I know. I thought about that. I said, "Good, the press release just hit the wire." So you think about what's happening, as the pandemic has become an endemic. Omnichannel is the way, especially if you're a retailer with bricks and mortar, omnichannel is the way customers shop today, right? I might
sure.
buy online, return in store. I might, you might have Bopis or, Boris, pick up in store, return in store. You've got this kind of fluid dynamic going back and forth between online and in store. So you say, well, what headaches does that cost? So let's talk about, inventory incongruence. Like I might have a much broader assortment online than I do in a given store. And we all know that stores in general are, you might have a smaller footprint, you might have specific assortment that's relevant to that market, that season, that store, what have you, and much broader assortment online. So if one of my customers returns something in the store, what do I do with it? How do I actually
Sure.
receive it? So, and we'll happy to send the press release to you, but you think about there's the front of the store and back of the store aspects of things, if you will. So the front of the store is that customers are so used to now, let me answer a couple questions, get a QR code, scan my code, and let me just get on with the day. And we have proven through pilots and tests that we've done in market that, not surprisingly, customers who have a more easy, less friction filled experience in the store, guess what? They're more apt to say, maybe I'll shop around in the store. I'm in a good mood now. I was able to return the product, and it might be time like, okay, I have 15 minutes to go return this, and I'm kind of dreading standing in line. So, first is like reduce the line, make it faster, easier for the shopper to return. Oh, by the way, like the worst thing in the world is all these blind returns coming to stores. So wouldn't it be nice to actually have some feedback on why is that shopper returning that item? Is it something wrong with the item? Did it not fit right or what have you? So you could then pass that on and reduce the return rate.
Yeah.
And then we find that shoppers are in a good mood. They're more liable to go browsing. They purchase. More in the store. And then this was the really a funny thing that I heard recently is that they're actually nicer to the associates because guess what?
Oh,
You're not fighting somebody about something, so if technology, I feel like, wow, you're like just we can spread goodness, just make things easier for everybody. So I love that opportunity. And then of course there's what on earth do I do with this item that's come back? So there's the dispositioning question. So we have programs that are getting underway with national retailers to figure out, well, what should I do with this item? That plaid shirt that came into the store, should I keep it in the store? Should I send it to a DC? Should I hold it in the store and fulfill from the store? What do I do with it? Maybe that item is priced differently from one store to the other, from one region to the other.
Mm.
Maybe, I don't know what the example, I guess a bathing suit's an easier example. It's out of season in Maine, but it's still selling in Florida or California. So there's all these decisions. So back to the AI and data, I'm really excited about our store solution because effectively you could think about stores as nodes on the return network, right? You're like teeny
Oh,
tiny
sure.
warehouses. So if we're doing this in giant distribution centers, makes total sense to like bring that same returns management system, that end-to-end perspective between stores and DCs, online and stores, like all of these different dots we can connect. So I'm really excited about that.
That is really cool. I'm personally excited, just that you're making retail easier. You're
Yeah,
making the cashier's life easier. As a former cashier, as a former
yeah,
stock guy, and everything else like that,
yeah.
anything that makes my life easier is gonna work. And so,
Right.
yeah, putting customers in a better mood is always a good thing. So,
Plus,
okay, that's kind of
let's face it, labor shortage is real. So having
yeah.
people who are there working in the store, who are trained, and guess what? Any retailer wants those people to be customer facing, helping sell more product, right? So
Absolutely.
having their time taken up by processing returns is not a good use of those precious hours and those people. So that's also pretty exciting, is to say, the store ops people are looking at it one way, the store manager is focused on, I want to make customers happy because if they're happy, they're going to buy more. You got loyalty, you got word of mouth, people are in a good mood, they're nicer to my cashiers. Like it's all goodness. So I'm
That's
really
good
excited.
stuff. Yeah. And so you talked about your store solution, which I think is a really kind of cool idea. And I'm excited to see how it plays out and everything else like that. You talked about how you're working with Gap and they're really supportive of your innovation. Where are you guys headed right now? What does 2025 look like?
Yeah, a great question. So I see us expanding stores in a big way, both in terms of, the dispositioning decision, the receiving decision in the stores. I definitely see us expanding with 3PLs because not every enterprise chooses to have their own DC. So 3PLs is a big focus for us. And then with all the data we have, we're really excited to figure out how can you spot the fraud, spot the abusers, and personalize the journey so that you're not punishing the good customers as you're trying to, manage against, those who are abusers. Because what you don't want to do is punish
Yeah.
everybody, right? So, everyone needs to go, take their shoes off when they're going through TSA, right? Everyone has to be subject to the 3-ounce
The
minimum rules,
same rule. Yeah.
right? Because you're treating everybody the same. So imagine if you did that with returns, and if you make it really hard to return, if you charge everyone for returns, if you make it really hard, you're going to turn away the good people because, not surprisingly, 80% of customers, or north of 80%, will look at what's the return policy before they buy online. And what is everybody on right now? You're on your phones all the time, right? You're jumping between sites, you're doing this, you're doing that. So like you have to support ongoing commerce while you minimize the costs and whatnot. So spotting fraud and enabling personalization is another key goal of ours. And then
Okay.
not surprisingly, a lot of our retailers are interested in international because they're international brands. So expanding internationally is on the horizon. So we've got lots of exciting things in store.
That sounds cool. That sounds cool. Hey, so we're bumping up against our time limit here, but I wanted to ask you the same question I ask everybody across the board. If you had to go back to that psychology major and tell her some advice, what would you tell her?
I think a lot of the confidence I've gotten to do what I've done comes from, putting in the work and then having the self-confidence to take a chance and go someplace outside of your comfort zone while you're guided by your core principles. So it's a combination of put in the time, be a student, do the work, learn it, and then have the confidence to take that risk, because no innovation or creativity comes from everybody sticking to the status quo.
Yeah.
It's really about people asking questions about, why is this happening this way? What if we did it another way? So it's to really gain the courage to ask those questions, which really comes from a foundation of, humility and the effort you put in and who you work with. So that's a mouthful, but it's kind of a whole growth mindset approach, if you will,
Yeah.
to how you deal with your career and with, trying to make an impact.
Perfect. I think that's perfect advice. I'm more than thankful. I hope we can maybe connect in about 6 months, see how you guys are doing with stores, and see how things are working out for you. But thanks again for joining us.
Cole, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to keeping in touch. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Alrighty. Bye.
If you would like to be featured on our podcast, please email us at podcast@retailcorner.live or visit our website, retailcorner.live. Looking forward to having you as our guest on our podcast, and thank you so much for listening.